to is a person that doing kindness to his soul is or doing to his soul, taking care of his soul, is a man of kindness. So that goimel, so he says shnei pirushim. There are two meanings in the word goimel. Goimel meloshn afrosha. The word goimel could also mean separate. Vayigdal hayeled vayigoma. That the child grew up and he was weaned. Weaning, the milah means that he becomes separated from his mother. Instead of being always attached to his mother, he is now weaned from his mother. So we see that the idea of goimel could mean separation. I think in modern Hebrew, maybe it's also a related word. There's an idea of retirement. I think it's called gamlaut or something like that. Means, I guess, separating from work. I'm not sure. The Hebrew speakers will have to tell me about this. The goimel lashon hashpah, goimel is from the word giving, like we were talking about the whole time. Like mils chasadim, we're giving kindness. Goimel nafshay melashon hashpah. So now, these two meanings of goimel depends in what particular aspect of davening we're talking about. When we're talking about goimel nafshay for the word hashpah, doing mils chesed, Uba'avoida, the tefillah, b'shmetzad nefesh lekis. It's the avoida of davening from the nefesh lekis's perspective. Sha'Allah shvichas nefesh, the ascent of the nefesh lekis, the pouring out of the soul. B'shvil hamshach is for the sake of the hamshach that follows. Goimel nafshi melosh nafrasham, and goimel nafsh from the word that he's separating. That is a nefesh habahamis. Ubahakrovas nefesh habahamis shebetfilah. That's the offering up of the nefesh habahamis in davening. Lifresh velotzis minyane oilam v'liyas bebittul, to separate and leave from worldly matters, to be in a state of bit Allah elevation. Ubahavoida shemitzad nefesh habahamis, and avoida from the perspective of the animal soul. Allah he loy b'shvil hamshachem. The elevation is not for the sake of the drawing down, but that is its own desire. This is the difference in nefesh lekis and nefesh habahamis. We were talking about davening having a component of halah, of elevation, but elevation for the sake of drawing down. That's the nefesh lekis's approach of davening. That's the goimel nafshim b'lashon hashpah g'mils chasadim. But the elevation is only to draw down. But the avoid of the perspective of the avoid of nefesh habahamis is he's not about drawing down. He wants to go up, and that's his goal. That's his purpose. That's why goimel by the nefesh habahamis, goimel nafshi ish chesed, is talking about separation, removal. Shleiman, then the Rebbe adds another thing. The fact that the davening of nefesh lekis is also called goimel nafshay, gam losh nafrasham, that goimel is also means separation. Even though we're saying that the nefesh lekis is goimel is hashpah, but it's still included in the word goimel, so it must have both meanings. The nefesh lekis. Why did this indicate shegam b'hatfilah the nefesh lekis? Yeshna ha'allah shebedugmas ha'allah nefesh habahamis. Also in the davening of the nefesh lekis, there is also an ascent that's similar to the ascent of the animal soul. That the goal, the purpose, the desire, what is he trying to attain? It's also about ascending and elevation. Okay, that was parenthetically. Now he's going to go back to really our topic about the idea that this came after the Chet HaEgel. So he's going to get into the idea of forgiveness, different levels of forgiveness, different levels where this forgiveness emanate from, and how this relates to different types of davening, karbonos, these two types of ways that we were speaking about. For Allah versus Hamshach. Behini Yadu, a second paragraph on page 12. It's known the Beslich of a Kapor Shnei Inyan. In forgiveness and atonement, there are two aspects. First of all, Shaidei Hamshocha Mi'atzmos Arnesof Balarotzen She'enim Much Barotzen Misbatlam Achatoim Vavgam. Through drawing down from Hashem's essence, who is the master of the will, and because he is the master of the will, so he's not obligated by the will, so the sins and the blemishes are nullified. The point over here is that they are nullified. So I'll add another point in a moment. What does this mean practically speaking? If I, let's say, am working for someone else, and I don't know, I'm working for Reuven, and Shimon owes Reuven money, I can't tell Shimon, well, let's throw the rules out the window. You messed up, you owe money, let's forgive the debt. I don't necessarily have that capability. But Reuven, who owns the business or owns the situation, he is the Baal Harotzen. He can decide, you know what, this debt is over and done. So because there's the level of the Baal Harotzen, when the Hamshacha comes from the Baal Harotzen, the sins, the blemishes, it cease to be. Because Hashem is not limited by the will that he has. Another idea, another level, well, a deeper level in forgiveness and atonement. Through the drawing down, Hashem's very essence, the master of the will, Nimshach Rotzen Chodesh, comes down a new will. That's beyond the will that left through the sin. When a person offends someone else, so then that other person withdraws. When you tap into that person's Baal Harotzen, when you tap into Hashem's Baal Harotzen, so now not just can the sins be put aside, can the blemishes be put aside, but a whole entirely new will can be created by Deizem Nasem Merutza Lefonav Yisbarach Moikaydem Acher. Through that, the person that did the sin, he becomes a completely accepted as he was before the sin. This is similar to what Alter Rebbe brings down in the Ger Satshuva. It's not identical to that. That there's two things. I asked forgiveness by Hashem. I had charota Allah Kabbalah Lahaba. I regretted the past, and I accepted to do the future. And and Hashem will not look at any of the damages anymore that I made. That's canceled out. But I'm not necessarily accepted and have the same favor in Hashem's eyes unless I bring a carbon, or like it's brought down Kabbalah, there are different fasts. These days that we don't fast, Alter Rebbe says through tzedakah. That's to bring merutza v'chaviv l'fana. Here, we are identifying this with two different approaches. One thing is that because he's the Baal Harotzen, he doesn't have to be limited by the will, and therefore the sins are erased. A deeper thing is, since he's the Baal Harotzen, he can bring down a new Rotzen for this person to make him close and favored as well. He says, Vachiluk, line 4, end of the fourth line in this paragraph, Vachiluk, Ishnei and Yonim, the difference between these two matters, the reason that through the drawing down from Hashem's very essence, all the blemishes are nullified. The emphasis on nullified. It's ceases to be. Since Hashem is not obligated by his will, he chose, and now he chooses to let that go. Which, in another way of putting it, is he's moved over. He is removed from the will. Since he's removed from the will, true, because of the will, there was a blemish made, he could decide that blemish is gone because he's beyond it. That is step one that we have here. The fact that a new will can come down from the Eibush, not because he's separated from Ella Adrab, just the opposite, because he is the master of the will. That is because he owns the will, he can create a new will. One is about being aloof and removed from it, and one is ownership, and he could create something new. The bedargas harotzen and the level of will, yesh hagbola ba'oifnam shechasi. There's a boundary and a limitation in how it's drawn down. Ukisha oisim heb karotzen umistalik. Person has shalom does against the will, so the will leaves because you're not in concert with my will. Enkim balarotz, as opposed to the master of the will, the one whose will, the one who created the will. The master is not limited in the will. The will is limited, but he is not limited by it. And therefore, even after they did the opposite of the will, that through that the will left, actually it's possible to come down from that and new will. Now, the Rebbe is going to apply this about the idea that we were talking about, the atonement that we were talking about, that Rabbi Yochanan said, these days we have the kapara that can replace what we had then. We could say, that's what we said earlier. The main atonement is Gemilas Chasadim, that doing acts of kindness is the main kapara, not karbonis. We said because the inner will of above, what is Hashem's true will? It's in drawing down here below, and that's why desire means the pnimius haratz and chesed. So this idea, this point, Hashem's desire that causes this kapara is not so much concerning step A, wiping away, but step B, being accepted by Hashem. It's primarily concerning the fact of being accepted by Hashem, and also concerning the repairing of the blemishes, not erasing it, repairing it, and being as beloved and as favored by Hashem as before. That needs the Gemilas Chasadim, which is the Hamshach Lamat, but concerning removal of the blemishes, the first step that we spoke about previously, the Indians, and this comes about because Hashem's very essence, the master, the will, he is removed from the will, therefore he's not limited by the will, and all the blemishes can be nullified. There, to accomplish that idea, the bittul of the pagamim, so over there, it's not about hamshacha primarily, it's hamshacha that has an association with an Allah, with the elevation. Through the ascent, through leaving his being, through the state of nullification, we've reached the idea, this level in the master, the will, that he's separated from the will. And through the drawing down that follows the elevation, it comes about this idea that the infinite light of Hashem is separated from the will, that manifests lamata vaydezem ispatim abgamim, through that the blemishes are removed. So if the level of merutza v'chaviv, the tikkun abgamim, the repair of the blemishes, being accepted like before, you need to have the drawing down from above to below, which is Gemilas Chasad. If The idea is the bittul hapgamim. That is more, the Hamshachar is connected with the Halah because you're rising above yourself, you're rising above your Metzias. By rising above your Metzias, you are also expressing the connection with Hashem that's above and risen above and beyond the level of will that nullifies the blemishes. Now we're going to get back to what we were talking about by Moshe Rabbeinu. And we said that in the pasuk it says Kisisos Rosh Bnei Yisrael, but in the Gemara it says Met Tarim Keren Yisrael. We're talking about there's the Rosh, there's the Keren. The Rosh is the level of intellect, Koikas Pnimim, or even the Gogoilos that has to do with the Koikas Pnimim. Keren is like Keser, way beyond everything. So, Kisisos Rosh Bnei Yisrael, that's what it means you will raise the head of Bnei Yisrael. Isa b'Gemara is brought down the Gemara. Amar Moshe Bnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe Rabbeinu said before Hashem, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, B'Metam Keren Yisrael, how will the Keren Yisrael be raised up? Amar Loi b'Chisisa, he told them through Kisisa. Yashloima Sheshnei Ha'inyanim the b'Chisisa. We could say the two aspects of raising up, Siyas Vagbos HaRosh Bnei Yisrael, raising and elevating the head level of Bnei Yisrael, then a higher level, V'Aromas Keren Yisrael, and raising up even higher the level likened to Keser, the Keren of Bnei Yisrael. Aim al derech Shnei and Yom the Gemara. It's similar to the two ideas that we said now about Gemilas Chasadim. There's Gemilas Chasadim Kipshuta, the literal Gemilas Chasadim, which is about Amshacha Lamata. And then there's Mils Chasadim the Tefillah, and there's the Hamshacha of davening, which is about the Halah that brings to the Hamshacha. It explains, but Inyan, the idea behind this is the Hachalishus, the weakness, Yerida Vashpola, the descent and the lowering, Shenasai, the Achet, Beroish the Neshama, that we said that the head of the Neshama becomes weakened and becomes descended through the sin. We said it doesn't have the capability to shine in the internal out. That of it's top of page 9. It's similar to the removal of the oil that leaves because of a blemish, because of an avera. The light leaves to its root. And instead of shining in the vessels, it goes up, it leaves. So what do we have to do? Since the light left above from the caliph, the same thing, the head of my neshama is not shining in my koiches pnimim. In the sea of Vakbos, our idea of the raising up of the head, the power of revelation of the head of the soul is in the same strength that was initially, that we want to bring it back to the way it was initially. It should shine into the inner soul powers. Through giving the atonement that's stuck here, that is similar to the atonement, the filling of the blemishes and the returning of the will that happens through doing a Gemil's Chasadim in the literal sense. We're drawing down the Amshach down Hilamat. But Moshe Rabbeinu's concern was not about the level of the Rosh, that the Rosh is not shining in the Kochs HaGiluyim. His problem was, how will the Keren Yisrael, the higher level of the Neshama shine, the Etzem, the Kivin, not shine, but how will it be raised up? The Kivin, since the descent that happened in the level of the Keren, is Loishachet Paul Bayurida. We said in the Etzem of the Neshama, no sin can cause in it a descent. Ella rather, that it was not fulfilled the purpose that had to descend down here below. Moshe wondered, how is it possible to repair this? Yes, Shlomo, we could say, Moshe said, before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which means can also mean higher than prior to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How will the Keren Yisrael be raised? How do you fulfill? How do you repair this idea of the essence of the neshama, that the purpose was not completed? It's through the drawing down from the essence of the earnest of the master, the will, that's separated from the will. So that's the level that we need to tap into, not the level that makes a new will, but rather we have to tap into that which is completely removed. That's why Moshe Rabbeinu said it to HaKadosh Baruch. He addressed the level that's completely holy and separate, and not just HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You say to him is even more so lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, higher than, prior to the level of Kadosh and Muvdal. They lahamchit misham, to draw down from there this level. Amar loiso, Hashem answered Moshe Rabbeinu b'chisisa. Zeh Moshe yisas roisham b'hagbah, by the fact that Moshe will be the one that will raise up their head. Shegam amshachas b'chinas lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu tzricha liyas adei b'chinas chaf. Even drawing down such a high level, the level that's lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, higher, that's Kadosh and Muvdal, totally separated from the will, it has to be through the level of Chokhmah. Everything has to go through the Seder Ishtalshus of Chokhmah, which is in Yonish al Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, is the level of Chokhmah. Similar to where it's known that even the revelation of Sovev Palam. For example, when Mashiach comes, there'll be the revelation of Sovev Palam. It will still go through Memalik. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that has to bring this down, this level that's beyond Seder Ishtal. Though Moshe Rabbeinu's own effect from his own level, not from the level of Niflei HaKadosh Baruch, all he can do is the elevation of the head, the level of the neshama, that still has some connection to the koikus hagiluyim, the koikus apnimiyim. Nimshach b'zegam hakoyach d'bchinas lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, still and all. In that comes down a level that's higher than Moshe, comes down the level of before and beyond HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Days and Nasa Haramas Keren, you throw through that becomes the raising up of not just the right, but also the Keren, the utmost highest level. Now he's going to explain why in the pasuk it says that Yitnu, and in Rashi it says that Moshe Rabbeinu should take. Last paragraph, so this matter should come down to the Yitnu. Through the raising up, that through the raising up and of their head is through Moshe taking from them the atonement. Like Rashi says, take from them an atonement for tzedakah. Taking is inyan halash of tzedakah. It's the ascent part of tzedakah. Similar to what explained earlier in Isaiah. Through the literal Mils Chasadim, it's the drawing down of the will from the master of the will. Able to reach this idea of the master of the will that's beyond and removed from the will. That you need, we said, not just the literal tzedakah, you need to have the Mils Chasadim of davening. You can't just have Hamshacha alone like regular Gemil Sasadim. You need to have the Hamshacha that's connected with elevation. Then they'll be in Kuiper Nafshi in a similar veins concerning the atonement of the soul. Through the giving, that's what says Zeh Yitnu in the pasuk. Hamshach Sarotz. That's drawing down the will, the level of that he should be accepted by Hashem. 5 days, and Nasa Messias Padram Esraish, through that becomes the raising up of the head. 5 days, Moshe Lekeyach Mehem Kaifel Tzedakah, through Moshe taking from them a Kaifel Tzedakah, Inyan Halash of Tzedakah, the elevation of Tzedakah. It's the drawing down of the essence of the Ein Sof beyond the will. Then by days of Torah, Karen Yisrael, through that, the Karen Yisrael, which is higher than the Rosh, becomes raised up. Often the Karen Torah becomes in such a way that his principle will be raised up in glory and honor.